My name is Jason Owens. I've been tattooing for about 15 years, and I own Thank You Co. Tattoo. I've had it for about 6 or 7 years. The shop's been here for about 25, so one of the older shops in Hollywood for sure. I worked here for a few years before, and then ended up taking it over. Having a shop that's been there for so long, it's kind of a staple in Hollywood. Changing the name was always something that I struggled with. It kind of fully turned into something that could have been mine. It's hard to turn that down. We've always tried to give back to our clients, the community, and things like that. So Thank You Co. seemed like a good fit for what we do here. And yeah, there's like a good energy in the place. So that's definitely what we were looking for moving forward. When I was a kid, I actually, I was into a lot of like mechanical like things, right? Like, so figuring things out was always something I did. I've been an obsessive kid, but I didn't really get into drawing until a little bit later. A lot of my artwork and things like that got curated actually through tattooing. So everything I know, what I've grown to love and illustration wise has actually come from tattooing. So I didn't get into art really until I was like 16, and then I just jumped into it. I think I was just being an angsty teenager, honestly, and I didn't want to do whatever I was doing then. And then I watched my friend get tattooed. I got sucked into the industry that way, and I haven't really done anything since. I'm a pretty quiet guy in terms of what I tell my family and stuff like that. I don't think they had any idea what I was gonna do. I didn't either, honestly, at the time. I mean, really was 16 when I really got into tattooing. So I was super focused on that, and there wasn't really a lot to, in terms of like, or how to learn. There's so much online or like resources now that is a lot more of an open door policy. The road that got me into tattooing was insane. It's the same story as a lot of tattooers, like skateboarding, punk rock music, all those things kind of led me into tattooing. And it was a lot different, 16 years ago, no one had as many tattoos, but the drummer in our band ended up getting tattooed by my eventual mentor. And like, I was blown away that like at 18, someone got that. And like back then, getting a big tattoo on your arm was different. I was in a band growing up called The Drudges. It was normal like street punk rock band. We played at a lot of the places that like I grew up at, like Pompano Indoor Skate Park. It was called Flow back in the day, and like that place raised me, right? And that place led me into even who I am today. And I skateboarded quite a bit. I was sponsored by them. It was my whole life, and my band members ended up getting tattooed. And then when I got tattooed, like I said, it was game over from there. And since then, it's been kind of pedal to the metal. I didn't want any excuse to not be a tattooer, right? So like I got my neck and my hand tattooed like a long time ago. Terrible idea. I couldn't even get a job at like a restaurant as a host, and I had my forearm tattooed, and I just told the owner of the restaurant, I was like, hey man, I have my forearm tattooed. And he's like, oh, I can't hire people with tattoos. I wanted to assure that this is what I did, so I made it to where I couldn't get a job otherwise unless I was a tattooer, and definitely worked. My first tattoo was a horseshoe in the middle of my back. I'd say about that big, about 6 inches big or something like that. And it was terrible, it hurt. Like I was shocked about how bad it hurt. And I was super sunburnt. Like I was the worst client, like first client ever. This old skateboard tattoo that I have, my mentor did, it really is one of my favorite tattoos. I just got tattooed I wanted to look tattooed, right? I was so young, I was like, man, just take me serious. And I have some pretty terrible work on me, but I got my left arm by a good friend of mine, Vince Moisden, down here that I got to finish. I forget that I even have tattoos sometimes. Like I don't even look at them. I got my wife's name on me, which everyone says not to do, but I'm very, very lucky that I have that wonderful person. So definitely that I really couldn't do. Like having that family unit at home is something that I really can't imagine doing all of this, owning a shop, having that strong unit at home. Beyond a necessity, right? It's something that I can't really even imagine anything without. So I try not to. Being in tattooing, you're kind of everyone's therapist, and like everyone's like, oh, you don't get it till you have kids. And when you actually have a kid, and it's been the 3 things that I've said have knocked me on my ass in more ways than one is owning a business, having a kid, and getting married. Those 3 things have been all amazing. But yeah, my little guy he's 6 now. His name's Asher, little boy. It's amazing. He's probably more artistic than me. The creativity comes from like being immersed in the knowledge, and that's definitely something that he is, but he is a much more imaginative individual. I hope he does get into tattooing. It would be a really rad thing. I still think my wife is 10 times, if she actually tattooed, she would put me out of business. she chooses to not do that, thankfully. So I think with every tattooer's wife is the burden of never getting tattooed. It's funny because in my mind, I'm like, oh, she doesn't have a lot of tattoos, but I think to most people she does. She has like a half sleeve and a couple peonies all over. Everything in my life is like a light switch. It was a culture thing. I got tattooed at the shop, and like the guy that ended up tattooing me had his throat tattooed. I'm like, who the fuck gets your throat tattooed? And like, it's funny now I have my throat tattooed, but if a TV network made a tattooer, right, it was this guy. It was a very weird dude, big pink mohawk, like giant labret ring, boots, had a lot of self-portraits that he did of himself around him, like super fucking bizarre. Very, very interesting adventure, needless to say. Yeah, man, I was a little shithead for a long time. Ever since I got like I said, this is all I've ever done, so as early as possible, I was really tattooing. I hid my tattoos from my mom and pretty much everybody for a while, but I got tattooed very early, but she refused to acknowledge that I had my hand tattooed for years. Now it doesn't really matter. She doesn't care. Now I get in trouble for tattooing my other family members. I don't know what it was. There was something about tattooing that I was like magnetized to, and I still am to this day. Fast forwarding to when I actually got tattooed by my mentor, I always, like, there wasn't a lot of information, but I always heard like, get tattooed by a guy you try to learn from or anything like that. And then I got my break. He's like opening up a shop on the west coast of Florida. I ended up moving there. I lived out of my car. I lived in the shop. To be that young and to live out of your car or whatever and not even care. I lived in a guy's closet, when I moved. I was like 17 years old or 18 years old, whatever. I moved across the state of Florida to a guy I didn't even know. My mentor was like, there's a guy you could live at his house. And like living at his house was living in a closet. So I lived in a crawl space for a while. Not my place to say the goals of everybody, but I know for myself, having the ability to find that peace in any situation, and I learned a lot of those skills by being in the trenches, doing the wrong thing. I got most things wrong in the beginning. A lot of error, they just went to trial, unfortunately. Whatever I could do to get into tattooing, I didn't know if I was just gonna be working for free. I've always kind of had this weird thing in me where it's like, if you do something long enough, you'll eventually get it, right? Like, I don't know many people that have tried that hard for that long and eventually haven't got there, right? So like, I was willing to eat shit for a long time to maybe tattoo for a living. And even in my apprenticeship, like, I was scared, you know what I mean? Like, I had crazy apprenticeship stories. I did my apprenticeship in the west coast of Florida, in Cape Coral. So I was over there at a shop called Gearhead Tattoo. I moved back here and I was driving back and forth between Cape Coral and Fort Lauderdale, and then ended up working here. And yeah, I don't even think I told my family about like the stuff I went through in my apprenticeship. My crazy apprenticeship stories kind of are a laundry list of things. I was so nervous, man. I didn't know, like, I was so scared to even fucking talk in a tattoo shop. I was a little kid, and the guys I was working with were like car junkies, big bikers, and one of the guys was like gonna prank me and be like, that was my wife, right? Or whatever it was. And it wasn't. Some old salty looking dude pulls me in the back of the shop and he's like, hey man, I heard you were talking to my wife. And I was like, what? I don't even know. Ended up like pulling a gun on me, like jokingly. The guy who pulled the gun didn't know. He's like, I'm gonna take you out and beat the shit out of you. And I'm like, all right, like I'm good with that. You know what I mean? Like, we'll figure that out. He got pissed. Like, I think he got actually mad that I wasn't super stressed out. But then like, he did pull the gun out. So I'm like, shit, am I gonna get shot? I closed my eyes and I was so stressed. I was like, fuck it, this is how it goes, I'm like, just shoot me. Whatever you're gonna do, just do it. I'm stressing out right now. And then I opened my eyes and he's like, oh, I got you. I'm like, what the fuck? This is my third day of work. It's like, this is a great apprenticeship so far. Sometimes when I laugh about and hear some funny apprenticeship stories now, he's like, oh, he made me do this when I was late. It's like, are you crazy? Like, I was in a dunk tank in a gold Speedo or whatever. They tried to legally change my name. Thank God I didn't have like a social security card. Like, I just moved across the state on a whim. And, but they had some awful names that clearly the state of Florida wouldn't legally change my name. But I think they landed on Geezer. This is all in like the first 30 days. I was so scared to lose my apprenticeship that like there was nothing I was gonna say no to at that time. So yeah, thank God I'm not Geezer. My apprentice, I beat into it about knowing the foundation of what's there. Don't learn how to draw that one thing. Learn how to draw like the structure of stuff, and simple color theory and composition has carried my career to where it's at now. It's a good thing to carve your own path, right? But it's another thing to look at the paths that were there before you and you can make your own off that. It's not a bad thing at all, but skin is skin. So the rules have applied the same, and it is helpful with the technology and tattooing getting a little bit better, but put something on somebody that they're gonna love forever. I'm kind of in this weird middle ground with apprenticeships to where like I was, in some ways, all the crazy things I learned during my apprenticeship, to go through those things, it really molds you into the individual you are moving forward. So the lessons that I've learned have even helped me like in every way of my life. I've been through a lot in my life, and a lot of things, I take mental health really seriously. I didn't always, right? It was always a serious thing, but I never knew how to take it seriously. And I didn't really connect with people in the right ways for a long time. And most of the time you're a bigger shithead than you realize. And it's a lot easier to look outward than inward, but you owe it to yourself to be happy a lot more than anything else. And I don't know, I get bummed when people don't see that. Being able to go home with a positive mindset is a beautiful thing. Yeah, apprenticeships are definitely a little different now, I think. If apprentices now can like never forget where they came from, it kind of cements you into doing the right thing moving forward. My first apprentice, we didn't do that bad with him, but man, it was just more of the manual labor stuff, that the head games, like making someone want to quit, because like if I had to go through it, I'm not gonna pull a gun on you or change your name, but I'll do something in between all that for sure. Work ethic is something I've always valued in the people around me, and the guys that I look up to have an amazing work ethic. I think it's something to be followed suit. It's been a really good thing to surround myself with people that have the same mentality and the same drive into what they do. I really do value the relationships I've gotten to build in tattooing. It's something that I take really serious, and a good thing about me, half the shit you tell me I'm gonna forget until the next time I see you anyways. So secret safe with me, but it is, you go through the physical pain with somebody, and it's not always bad stuff, man. Sometimes people just gotta talk about good stuff too. I really do enjoy connecting with people and having the ability to have those relationships. So I'm grateful for the opportunities I have gotten. I'm lucky that my wife and kid are so understanding of the crazy hours I have, and to really try to have some amazing, loving people that are around me, and not be worried about anybody else who isn't like that. Be like water, my friend. Even though the industry has changed, like everything changes, right? I think tattooing, for the most part, held back a lot of the bigger culture changes that a lot of other industries did. And some things did need to change in this industry. I think there was a lot of things that needed to move forward that were kind of stuck in the Stone Age. It's definitely I don't want to say an easier, it is. It's a way easier industry to get into. The resources you have now to get into tattooing are very, very, very much at your fingertips. There's been a lot of good and a lot of bad, so I try to look at things as hands off as I can, and just kind of adjust with the flow of it. I think the amount of information that's freely out there changes everything. I don't even know if you can compare the industry from 10 years ago to now. When I got into tattooing at that time, there wasn't even really social media. There was MySpace, I think, like that. There was a website called Ink Nation, and it was kind of the start of like social tattooing and people seeing different sides of the industry like that. Instagram is our industry. I think now Instagram hasn't changed yet. If you have another way to connect to that many people, you let me know. I'm very grateful that I have a lot of out-of-town clients, and like, I don't know how possible that would be. And now it's almost like it's all self-sourced, and like, it's hard trying to please a robot and like trying to figure out what algorithm it is that week or whatever it is. But it is nice that like I can connect with clients on certain things, and on a personal level, like I get to see my favorite tattooers and what they're doing. And I think that as a whole has made tattooing significantly better. The outreach that Instagram has, or social media in general, has given tattooers is wider, right? The scope of it is a good thing, man. I use the Flux for almost everything. Having a wireless machine is pretty amazing, man. Like it really did. Like you end up tattooing, look like a cyborg with all these cords coming out of you. Not having to be glued to a foot pedal or a power supply and all those things is pretty freeing. And like to be able to tattoo in positions that I'm not flipping a cord over my shoulder or around my, like it looks crazy. The plug and play that you have in tattooing now is like, I really did. I thought it, but it really is something that it changed a lot of things. It's not just getting my art better, right? Everybody can do that at a certain point, but how can I make my process easier? I have this incessant need to try to get just a little bit better. The machines now, like they're wireless and they're almost completely silent. The sound of a tattoo shop now, you know what I mean? It's almost, there is no sound. And I fought that for a long time for no reason, right? Because I'm an asshole and I like old things. Before, I think I have like 50 coil machines, and that's the one I've kept. And now, like, you really do have machines that can kind of do everything. As much as I feel the right tool for the right job is still a very valid point. The fact that you have one tool for 75% of the jobs is pretty amazing in its own right. Going into this, any pen style machine, anything like that, the change has been exponential. I think in the last 10 years, there's been more changes to our industry in terms of just machine-wise and mechanics than there has been anything. It's almost revolutionized what we actually do now. I've actually used FK irons, rotaries from the first one. I think I had the first direct, I had the first halo, and fast forward to the Flux was the first pen machine I ever picked up, and it really is like my daily driver now. Flux in general has like, there's like the 3 parts to the hit, right? So it's what it does when it first hits the skin, how it's pushing through the skin, and what's at the bottom, right? Like, is it pulling back? Does it want to just kind of rest? And that duty cycle moving forward is something that I think is not understood enough. The more you get into those things like that and you realize like how good certain machines are, it really does change the game for you a lot. The speed in which I tattoo now is definitely pretty nuts. It's nice not having to switch between a bunch of machines. It's nice having that everything's in front of you. The cartridges are really a big help. As I've gotten farther along, it really is like the quality of the experience and the quality of the tattoo, and truly trying to push whatever tattoo I'm doing to the best of that ability is, it's stressful, man. Someone's wearing that thing forever, so it's kind of our responsibility to keep that quality as high as possible. And don't be a dick to clients, man. I'm so tired of that shit right now. What someone goes through to get in your chair, right, is not always equated to money or travel distance. For me to ever kind of call it in or not take that as serious as possible, like, it's kind of one of the biggest dick moves you can do. If that person took that much time and looks up to your work in that level, man, the least you can do is give them a great experience and treat them with kindness. Just do the one thing they asked me to do and do a great tattoo on them. My style of tattooing really kind of came from what I saw before I got in the industry, right? And so it started with traditional, and I really, really loved getting into like old traditional Americana, some of like the more Japanese. And like, I'm really careful saying like I do Japanese tattoos, right? Like, I definitely try to follow some of the principles of traditional Japanese and things like that. Irizumi and Japanese style tattooing. I mean, even traditional Americana stuff, right? Like the origins of it, a lot of it has stories. I think if you're really getting into any style, is really important. Like, even if it's Polynesian, Maori stuff, like if that's gonna be something you do, I think it's important to delve into the people who came before you, right? And not even tattooers. You know, like you're talking like Utagawa schools and things like that, where like this is where like the meat and potatoes of what we do come from. And that's where you start to connect with other artists and you start to see tattooing not as just an artistic thing, but like kind of as like a vessel of communication. If that's their personality traits or anything like that, you can help cater to that and show them the meaning of what is out there. And this story lines up with what you want. So yeah, they all definitely have meanings and origins for sure. So when a client comes in wanting something that large scale, first you have to field how serious that client is. And I always try to convey how much work. It's not cheap. It's not easy. It's gonna hurt a lot. Sleeping's gonna suck. I'm not gonna sell it in the easiest way possible because I don't want you to start and then not have something to follow through with, right? And these are some pretty, like, sometimes life-changing moments when you're getting tattooed. I have this theory that, you know, like everyone's been to a wedding where there's a kid on the dance floor who's like the worst dancer ever, right? But he's having more fun than everybody because he doesn't give a shit. And like, no one's mad at that kid. Everyone's stoked for that guy. The mentality of like truly living that free. And I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do everything I can to find that freedom on the dance floor, baby. When I started doing back pieces, I didn't realize like, that's like all ribs and kidney area and soft tissue, like it's awful. When I was having like a client cry on me, like, dude, I'm a nice guy. Like, I felt terrible, man, you know what I mean? But like, when you get tattooed on that level, I couldn't wrap my head around sitting through that much, but it's like, I get tattooed again, and I didn't get tattooed for years, and I got tattooed again. I'm like, oh, I'll be fine, right? Like, I know, and I'm like, this is fucking awful. Like, this is, like, why do people do this? And then pay for it. You know, you have a 19-year-old kid who works part-time, saves up for half a year. You don't know what he didn't get or did get to get a tattoo from you. And like, crazy to actually think about some of the stories that some people have told me they've done to get tattooed. I fell in love with it. I saw a full bodysuit at a convention, and it didn't resonate as a tattoo to me, right? It was a culture. It was something that someone dedicated their life to. Tattooers that focus on Japanese and things like that, I looked up to their work ethic. I looked up to what it meant to them, and the connection you develop with a client. I still love that side of tattooing, that you can just walk in and pick something, you know, and that's the juice, you know, like that's the love that people come in and can get something original. I don't know, I think it's really important to kind of give your client something that they're gonna wear forever. And focus on that. And so like, Japanese really kind of catered to that style, and I haven't looked back since. Been focusing on that for 8 or 9 years now. And I still feel like I just started. Man, it's a mountain to climb. When I do go home, like I'm not done, you know what I mean? Like, I still have studying. I wake up and I think about this, and I probably do it more than almost anybody I've ever met. Like, and it's something that keeps me peaceful. It's pretty unhealthy to most other people, but this is my whole life. I think, you know, always being a student in whatever you're doing is a really important part of anything. It's not just a tattooing thing. You know, there's building blocks and they work. And I think that the beginning process of learning anything can be a little slower in those ways, but in the end, you're gonna retain so much more knowledge and have an ability to pass that knowledge on. Like the idea of teaching in some way, and those young minds are pretty amazing. So to be anywhere of value in that would be something I would definitely be into. I never imagined, even, you know, years ago, that I would be in a position that I could do this. I don't want to not do this forever. Always got a lot of love for you guys, and I appreciate you taking the time to hang out here at the shop and the family, and everyone's super happy you're here, and it's all love always. So we'll be talking soon. Stop on by our new shop, Thank You Co Tattoo, in Hollywood, Florida, and come check us out. Peace.